Folks, welcome into another edition of SportsBookReview.com's Roundtable Series videos. We're going to talk a little bit of NFL today, some interesting happenings going around the league. Why don't I bring in my esteemed panel today, Gary Seegers, Ian Cameron, and Teddy Savransky. Let's take a look at some interesting things that popped up here, Gary. I'm going to start with you first. As we know, Jay Glazer comes on, does a video with a player in the NFL that not very many people know about who tested positive for COVID-19. But now we see one of the superstars, Von Miller, pops up and he tests positive for COVID-19, said he's not feeling any symptoms, feels good. But that's a big guy on the front lines here that tested positive first. My question to you to start off here, Gary, does this have any impact, do you think, on the players around the league getting back into camps, getting back into, even though we're doing that whole virtual thing in the offseason, but just moving forward, trying to actually get back on the field itself? Do you think this might hurt at all?
I don't think so. I think there may be some players that have, they're a little scared of what's going on anyway, but I think a lot of that league feels like they're invincible anyway. Obviously, they play an incredibly violent game. You talk about the Jay Glazer news with Brian Miller. That's one thing. Had he come out with it being Von Miller, that's a whole different deal, right? That would have been a much bigger news story as opposed to the Rams center that missed half of the year with an injury. I don't think anybody's going to be too worried about it because they are going to put their trust in the organizations and in the league to make sure that they are safe when they come back. They're going to have the tests. They're going to have what they need to make sure that they're okay. I think most of them feel invincible anyway. I think they're going to be fine.
No, it's an interesting point you bring up, too, because we're all in the Twitter world. Information travels fast. And in this downtime in the market where we can't talk about sports each and every day happening on the field, Jay Glazer does his interview. Stay tuned. I have huge news coming out. And we all follow each other here on Twitter. Ian, talk about Jay Glazer coming out with the information, your feeling on his information, and then some thoughts on Von Miller here.
Yeah, he pulled the wool over everybody's eyes. There's no question about that. Maybe he was teasing some kind of announcement. The NFL is going to be up and running and ready to start the season on time. No, it was just a COVID-19 coronavirus test positive for an NFL player. And, to me, to be honest with you, I think the network might have said to Jay Glazer, hey, make it sound like you got something big here. We got to try to make it sound exciting and interesting so people actually watch and see what you got to announce. I think there's some truth to that being part of the mix. As far as concern about Von Miller's positive test, I'm actually a bit surprised it took this long for a couple NFL players to test positive. Obviously, they are in a better scenario than, say, NBA and NHL players who a month ago when this pandemic and outbreak started, they're playing games. They're traveling city to city. So they're definitely going to be at much greater risk to contracting the coronavirus than, say, the NFL players were at that time. But we're finally starting to see evidence of that. I think by September, guys, when the season begins, as Gary alluded to, you're going to have testing in place. You're going to have Abbott and all these laboratories in the states that prepare these very fast COVID-19 tests. They're going to have those lined up to be at the ready for players that need them come the start of the season. You're going to have, I think, probably no fans when the NFL starts, most likely. There's going to be measures in place that will make starting the NFL season at least relatively, I think, safe enough to begin. And let's be honest, you're talking about greedy owners. You're talking about Roger Goodell. That is a very hell-bent, stubborn, focused group of people that at this point in time will move mountains to ensure the NFL football season starts on time. So I think the players, there concern about your health? Yes, but not enough, in my opinion, where we're going to jeopardize getting this season going because of it.
Teddy, when we talk about two NFL players testing positive, and obviously we're talking about Von Miller being one of the superstars, getting it, 31-year-old healthy male, and obviously not showing really too much signs. There's a twofold edge in this because I know just from human nature, oh my goodness, one of my peers actually got it. But if you look over even in the NBA and the NHL, these guys are getting it, not needing hospital stays, getting over in 14 days and talking about testing positive and moving forward. Could this be a positive thing that you could possibly spin it at as a player saying, hey, Von got it and he's fine? Or is this something that you think will be a detriment of getting guys into training camp starting on time here, Teddy?
You can spin it any way that you want to spin it, okay? But every player that comes down with coronavirus pushes the league back. Make no mistake about it. And when a superstar like Von Miller comes down with COVID-19, there's no debate, all right? All right, maybe we would have started things at the beginning of May or at the beginning of June. Every time this happens, it pushes it back another 2 weeks, and it pushes it back another 2 weeks. And it's, all right, well, now we got to worry about the next guy, and now we got to worry about the next guy. So, And it's also worth noting, saying Von Miller, not like he hasn't exhibited any symptoms. I mean, the whole thing started, he was coughing in the night, and his wife was like, "You don't sound normal, go get a test." So for him, it's still in theory, very early in the process. We don't know how he's going to be feeling a week or 2 weeks from now, because the one thing that has been very common with the COVID-19 is that it's taken 2-3 weeks to work through your body. And even if you feel fine the first week, I talked to a friend of mine that just got over it yesterday, and he's like, I was okay for a week, and the second week I was just, he's like, I didn't think I was going to make it. And this is a guy that wasn't hospitalized, but he's like, it's the worst feeling you've ever had in your life. And it goes on and on day after day. So even with the asymptomatic carriers, which Von Miller may be, we don't know. Every time we see one, it pushes it back a little bit further and pushes it back a little bit further. Even though these players are invincible, that's for them. For the rest of us, and for the world around us, doesn't matter how invincible they are. You got COVID-19. It's a problem, not just for yourself, but for all the players in the league around you.
Teddy brings up some good points here, Gary, as I bring you back in. When we take a look at pushing some things back as a possibility, let's not forget the NFL schedule is coming out on May the 9th. And being football fans we are, you look forward to it. You pick your team out. Where are we going to play this year? And again, with Teddy being out there in Las Vegas, every single NFL team and their fan base is saying, I can't wait till we play the Raiders so we can plan our trip to go out to Las Vegas and have some fun and cheer on our football team as they play the Raiders. But some interesting things will pop up here because this schedule may need to have some contingency plans, especially for preseason games. You used to have them 4 games, 2 of them you play at home, 2 of you have on the road. Then you start out on your journey throughout the NFL process. I'm excited for May 9th because it gives me a look at, where my Eagles going to play? Do we have the Thursday night game? Are we playing on, Thanksgiving at this point? Do we have the Monday night football game at home? It's a lot of fun to look forward to, Gary, but also as we take a look at, maybe some contingency plans might be needed here.
It is true. There may be some contingency plans needed. Obviously in California, they're talking about shutting down everything until 2021. If that's the case, you got a lot of franchises out there that are going to have to find somewhere else to play. So you may be moving teams around. You may be moving games around. It's a little bit easier to do when there's no fans in the stands. So I'm curious whether or not they're going to come up with an idea regarding that, or whether they just won't have fans at all for the season. Obviously, you don't want to do that. It helps to have fans there. It helps home field advantage, and it just makes a better product. But yeah, there's going to be contingency plans that need to be set on the back burner. I think they'll release the schedule anyway, just to give us something, because obviously they didn't push the NFL draft back. They want to give their fans something to look forward to. May 9th, still, almost a month away. I think they're going to go ahead with this and put the schedule out, and they can change things as needed going forward.
Yeah, what's interesting, Gary, as we talk about this too, Ian, I'm going to bring you in on this conversation, talking about the NFL schedule changing and moving forward and going back. It's a lot easier to me in the NFL to do this because the stadiums itself should be available. When you take a look at the NHL in your aspect, or maybe the NBA, we talk about all the concerts that roll through. So just because you say, hey, let's just move these dates around, some of these arenas are used in only maybe dark 10 to 15 nights a year. That shouldn't be a case in the NFL, but I'm looking forward to the schedule coming out, but also some of the contingency plans popped in. Do you think the NFL would have a tough time moving some of these games around, or say, hey, you know what? They got these logistics out early and they're just going to adjust as they come?
Yeah, the answer to the question, I think we will see schedule of some kind on May 9th. Like, the NFL wants headlines, all right? They want attention. Like, they're loving the last month or so on ESPN, where they're basically all NFL all the time for the last month during free agency, during draft prep. So I think they're going to keep the schedule plans for May 9th in terms of the announcement. The question is, what kind of schedule are we going to see? Are we going to see the same full season schedule? There's a chance we might. The big news right now, of course, is the United States is planning, President Trump is planning on opening up the country piece by piece, and getting the economy going starting May 1st and moving onward. I think a large part of where the NFL goes with their schedule is going to be how successful this is. Are you going to be able to open up state by state and not have a relapse, so to speak, into another outbreak, or just, maybe you open up too soon and now some more cases of the virus, you open yourself up to that? Or does this state by state opening up of the economy into quote unquote beautiful little pieces, as he said, is it really going to work? And is it going to be a situation where you can test, you can mitigate the cases, you can make sure that you're continuing to go up and flatten the curve and it goes down as opposed to go up, and you can maintain somehow physical distancing, and all of this goes off and without any sort of relapse, and it doesn't make the COVID-19 situation worse? I think then you could definitely, at that time, the NFL, after a month, whatever you do on May 9th, go ahead with your full schedule, I think, on May 9th. And then in a month from now, see how this state-by-state opening is. And if it's going well, stick to the full season schedule that you've already announced. If it's not going well and you're seeing states maybe have an uptick in cases, and because this is not going as smoothly as they wanted it to, then you can investigate at that time, about a month from now, say at the early part of June. You can investigate ways to maybe alter the NFL season schedule at that time.
Teddy, I'd love to bring your perspective in here because being out in Las Vegas, you're on the forefront right now of a brand new stadium getting built. And this isn't like the 50s, 60s, and 70s where somebody lays out $10 or $15 million, gets a little bit of tax money, and they complete the stadium. We're talking about owners and, tax partnerships with the state laying out billions of dollars. And I remember when Jerry Jones opened up AT&T Stadium, a really wealthy owner literally saying he was down to his last dime by the time they opened, and he had to recoup some of those losses immediately. You're looking in Las Vegas right now, and we do see deemed essential construction of how important it is to finish that facility. And the same thing in California, where Kroenke basically laid out the billions himself. He wants a return on that investment as well. Talk about a little bit of maybe the pressure from these actual owners saying, look, we want to get the football season underway, but boy, it would be real beneficial to get some fans in these seats so they can recoup some of the money themselves.
Realistically, we're not going to have fans. Okay. I mean, the owners can dream what they want to dream. The president can dream what he wants to dream. Whoever can dream what they want to dream. I don't envision a scenario in which the beautiful new Allegiant Stadium is going to be packed with fans on opening day. I can't imagine that scenario. Now, they're still going construction full steam ahead, both here and in LA. And there have been all kinds of issues in Vegas with the headlines coming out, 15 workers test positive at the Allegiant Stadium, and more this construction and that. I mean, there's been a lot of issues with workers testing positive and trying to keep social distancing while you're building a multi-billion-dollar stadium. Now, from all indications, work's still going. The roof, I just saw the pictures yesterday. The roof of Allegiant just got, they put the last thing in. The roof, the place is covered now. It's going to be ready come hell or high water for August or September. Same thing for the Rams. So for all the, is there going to be a delay? The stadiums will be ready. And if we have football in the stadiums where we're supposed to have them, both the Raiders and the Rams and the Chargers will be breaking in their new stadiums come September because they're going to be ready.
It's if anybody's seen any of the pictures there in Las Vegas, if the Raiders were going to play anywhere, why not play in Las Vegas in one of the coolest looking stadiums? We'll see how that opens up for fanfare, because get ready, and Teddy will tell you as well, Super Bowl is going to be played there. NCAA championships will be played there. The Final Four will be there. It's going to be a wonderful spectacle once it gets underway. Gary, let's have a little bit of fun here in the NFL itself. We're set up for the draft, obviously, next Thursday, but we still hear these rumors coming out, and usually where there's smoke, there's fire. It's Cleveland that we're going to be talking about today, and Odell Beckham Jr., the mercurial wide receiver, the all-star talent that got all that money in New York, shipped out quickly after that. Now he goes into Cleveland, gets that new regime now in town, and you're hearing the fire again behind the scenes, a little bit of smoke popping out that he might be traded to the Minnesota Vikings. You can go out and get him. So my question to you is, the trade rumors are heating up. Is it a good move for Cleveland to move on, or is it just, hey, time to break through, or we have nothing to talk about, and let's just make up a rumor by one of these beat writers here?
We have nothing to talk about, and let's just make up a rumor. That's all it is. It didn't come from anybody near the Cleveland organization or near the Vikings organization. Both sets of beat writers came out and said, there's nothing to this. There was no call made. Nothing happened. And I can understand it. You are on the back end of this OBJ deal. He's actually worth the money at this point. He's not hurting your cap a whole lot. It would be a great deal for the Vikings. Obviously, I mean, they need a new number one. He would be a great fit with the Vikings, but I also think he's a great fit with Cleveland. I think Cleveland's issue last year was not OBJ. It was not, necessarily Baker Mayfield, although I don't think he performed very well last year. I think it was all coaching. I think Freddie Kitchens was in over his head. It was just a disaster last year. I think with Stefanski, Cleveland will be just fine, but I don't think there's anything to these. There'd be no reason to drop him at this point.
Ian, any smoke to the fire with OBJ leaving? Because look, I saw OBJ quite a few times here in Philadelphia, and as you know anything, our secondary not the greatest at defending number one wide receivers, and torched us. I was so happy that he left, but now seeing some smoke out there that maybe he moves on from Cleveland with that new regime coming in. Smoke on this one, or maybe you think there's some truth to it?
I don't think it's going to happen. There are reasons for Cleveland to want to. I mean, $14 million in cap space saved. Obviously, if you trade away Odell Beckham Jr., you are talking about a guy that's had some, emotional issues off the field at times. You're talking about a guy that's coming off an inconsistent season. But at the same point in time, how many of us railed on the offensive play calling last year for the Cleveland Browns? It was absolutely brutal. I mean, you had a head coach who was not cut out to be an NFL head coach, and the offense was a disaster in terms of, just look at the red zone. How many times did the Browns just look absolutely horrendous in the red zone last year? So maybe you give Odell Beckham Jr. An opportunity with Stefanski here as his new head coach to get things going again. I think there's pros and cons to trading him and keeping him. If you're the Cleveland Browns, let this be a lesson to everybody, though. When you're reading stories and rumors and this could happen, the national stories from national writers, I don't care about them. I want to know what the beat writers are saying. I want to know what the people that are following these teams daily, reporting on these teams daily, are saying. And all of them are saying this trade was really not going to happen from the get-go. It's hard to argue with that.
No, it's interesting to look at, too, because Minnesota pops up. Obviously, hey, Minnesota has a need, but I mean, they still have Adam Thielen there. They got rid of Stephon Diggs, so getting rid of Stephon Diggs and then replacing with OBJ would have been an interesting one. As Teddy will always bring up, and I always like to needle Teddy, running backs' lives do matter. Does OBJ's life matter in Cleveland right now, Teddy?
So I'm a guy that says every running back is replaceable, and they are. I mean, the numbers show it. It couldn't be clearer. That's not the case at wide receiver. When you get the playmaker at wide receiver, you sign that guy long-term and you keep him on your team forever. And what it take for the Browns to get OBJ? A pair of number ones, if memory serves correctly. Now, 1 year later, after a disastrous season, you're going to trade him for pennies on the dollar. It's the type of move the Cincinnati Bengals organization would make. Not that Cleveland has been that much better than Cincinnati in recent years, but one thinks that with all the brain trust in Cleveland, they recognize this is a guy who can change games by himself. This is a guy who basically we mortgaged our future for. And this is a guy who he's had 5 healthy years. In each of those 5 years, he's had at least 74 catches and at least 1,000 receiving yards. He is an impact player on the field. And no, the touchdowns haven't been. The fantasy guys haven't been as thrilled with OBJ the last couple of years because they've looked elsewhere in the red zone. But this guy's a playmaker. I do not trade him for pennies on the dollar. And you already made the move. And all you guys are talking about what Cleveland's problem was last year. The biggest problem for Cleveland is that their offensive line stunk. So it didn't matter what play calling you had. It didn't matter what routes you had. It didn't matter how good a quarterback you had. There were no time for the routes to develop or for Baker Mayfield to throw. So if you say, well, can trading OBJ solve that problem? Hey, if they get 2 number ones and a starting lineman, maybe, I keep OBJ. I don't think it's for sale.
Trading anybody on this panel, that's unforgivable. We're going to keep all our superstars here. Thank you once again for tuning into a roundtable right here on sportsbookreview.com. For Gary Seegers, Ian Cameron, Teddy Safransky, I'm Donnie Seymour. Everything NFL right here at sportsbookreview.com.